The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Liu, along with my co-hosts today, Paula Yule and Otto Los. Paula and I work together at the Department of Services for the Aging, where she's the Deputy Commissioner, and Otto Los is friend, my weekly host, PI member, and our favorite ambassador. So we would like to welcome to the show Susan Capurso, who is an end-of-life doula, legacy creator, and author. And she's going to talk all about preserving your legacy with your voice, sharing stories that matter, discover the power of words to capture wisdom, experiences, and love for your family and future generations. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for having me today. This is great.
Yeah, and I'm so glad, Susan, this is your second time on the show. You were on a couple of years back, and it really struck me the wonderful work that you do. And in those years, even in Project Independence, we've been trying to do a lot of, kind of capturing your story and your legacy and, journaling and all these things, because I do think it is such a treasure, and it's not only for your family and friends, but for you as well to kind of reflect and get that out. So I would love to kind of just learn a little bit about you as well and let our audience know about, what is a legacy specialist?
So this was a second part to my life due to circumstances that were just unbelievable. So I didn't expect this to happen. And it's been maybe 7, 8 years now already. Time flies, right? So my journey was a personal one. Within a 2-year period, I lost 14 very close people in my life, family members and friends. And that experience made me realize how fragile life really can be. Um, but also to realize that there's a lot of value in people's memories and their wisdom and the love that they have the capability to leave behind, but often not. So I realized that as we can't control our time here on earth, right? Because life is short for so many. It became my mission to help others create meaningful legacies that can transcend generations and help their family and future generations once they're gone. And that's what I've been working on, and that's what I've been doing through many different projects.
You have many, looking at your website, you have a lot of different options for how to go about this, like different projects. Maybe just give us an overview of what they are. What are the options?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And I just also want people to know though that by preserving your memories, you're preserving the essence of your life. You're sharing these memories and the wisdom and values and love that only you have the capability of doing. Okay, so the importance of this work can't be overstated. We live in a fast-paced, often disconnected society, as you all know, and legacy work can bridge generations together. And it's so important to think about doing this ahead of time, and I'll give you reasons for that in a minute. But the 6 projects that I have were careful. They were designed specifically to help people capture the different aspects of your life. Okay, the timeline and your story. So one of them is a big project. It's a memoir project, and in essence, I'm a ghostwriter. So I help you leave a chapter book. It's about 10 chapters long. You can leave everything you want about your life in there, traditions, life events, stories of your own ancestors. That's a big project, and it can be. I do edit it and I upload it to Amazon. And this is a live book, a real book that you can pass on to your future generations, that you can sell on Amazon or just share it with immediate family members. I have a legacy book project, which is really a meaningful one. And the majority of my clients work on this one. It's a 12 by 12 hardcover coffee table book. And that's filled with specific memories and moments that have shaped your life in particular. And the coffee table book, I call it, has at least 100 pictures in there, and it has pages that can't tear, so it withstands the generations that come after you in preserving and looking at this book. There's a legacy interview that's done in a Zoom room just like this. And I help you share all those different types of things, your history, your hopes, your wishes, and so much more in this interview. And sometimes laughs and sometimes tears, but you'll get to see a family member's real reactions in the moment. It's not edited, so it's raw, and these go on USB drives for all your family members to hold on to. I have a legacy letter, which is just really a 2 to 3 hour conversation that I turn into a letter that is passed on to your family members, usually after you go. But it's for you to do anything you want with as well. And it includes your hopes and your wishes for their future. And you talk directly to that intended recipient, whoever receives that letter. There's a smaller project that I do as well, which is a smaller hardcover book with for bigger families or for groups of people who they all write individual letters. So, in other words, everybody in this room would write an individual letter. And it doesn't matter how long it is to the person you're honoring or your loved one. And I take all these letters and put them together in a hardcover book to gift for a holiday or special occasion or birthday or what have you. And that's a great thing to do to honor somebody's life. But my favorite, and I'm glad you asked this question, Otto, my favorite is the Forever My Voice project. And this is a really emotional project. I help people to express their love and appreciation and feelings for a certain family member or friend, whoever you may want to do it for, but it's in your voice only. It's a really intimate audio letter that is about 2 to 3 hours long, and I help guide this project ahead of time. Okay, so we know what types of things that you'll talk about. And I have it all bulleted in a PowerPoint presentation, and we have hand signals, so you know when, if you need to pause and ask me a question or something, or to move on to the next screen. And it comes on a beautiful old-fashioned little radio with an antenna and a dial. It actually
Oh, I
has a
love that.
message on the front of the radio, who it's going to, or your own little
Mhm.
personal message. And it sits on your bedside, on your end table, and you can hear this person talking directly to you. And I've learned through doing these projects for all these years now that our voices have such a tremendous impact, okay, on
Yeah.
the people that we love. Um, I have, it started because of a client who was married 60 years and to the love of his life, his soulmate. And after she passed, they were going to do a legacy project together, but then she had passed away. And he called me to tell me. And he says, and this was crying, a grown man crying on the phone with me through his tears, saying, Susan, what I would give to hear her voice
Mhm.
just one more time
Yeah.
and have that conversation with her one more time, but to hear her speaking to me, because we were together every day and every night,
Mhm.
and that's what he missed. And he wasn't getting that. He had a few family members, even grandchildren, who recorded holiday conversations, and you'd hear her in the background, come to dinner, or come on, everybody, get ready, or it wasn't doing it for him. This
Mhm.
wasn't the same thing that I knew he was looking for. So I thought when we hung up the phone, I was in tears now. And I thought, well, how can I make this happen for people?
Mhm.
Well, you can't because the person's already gone. But I thought, what a good grieving mechanism to really help somebody in this period of loss. So I've searched now for all these years and doing the other things, but I finally figured out how to do it. And I brought the project to fruition in Forever My Voice. And
Preparing for this
yeah,
session, you use the comments, would love to hear so and so's voice.
Mhm.
And I thought about that. As they well know here, I've been very diligent in the last 20 years of putting together all kinds of stuff, legacy stuff and whatnot. And then I thought about the voice factor that you brought up. And the reality of life is, back when movies didn't even have sound, you would take home
Right.
movies with no sound, 800,000 35 millimeter slides, no sound. Um, and a lot of people whose voices I would love to hear, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to hear them. And even myself, we've been doing this show for 14 years. If my kids have 853 years to listen to sound, they could listen to all these shows and hear sound. But it's
Mhm.
really not the same as a very condensed
Yeah.
story
Mhm.
of what really meant something to me and what I
right.
would like to pass on for whoever wants to listen. Not everybody cares, that's a fact, but there will be some down the road who do care. And I
Of
might be a
course.
prospect for you.
Of
No, but I
course.
think, because even with like I know for my own self, when I've like lost, my grandparents and having a voicemail, right? And it goes like
Yes.
to what you're thinking, and I think about that all the time. It's like you just like play, and you have like that moment that you just so the idea of what you're doing, expanding this and making it this personalized thing is such a beautiful thing for people. I mean, it's
Oh my
really just I
gosh.
can't even imagine.
My husband was the funniest man in the world. My house was so loud. My husband passed away unexpectedly at 52 years
Mhm.
old. I treasured the few voicemails that I had
Yeah.
until my phone locked up and I
Oh.
lost everything.
Uh,
And this is what happens if you don't do something intentionally. I want to
yeah.
give you a few examples for this
Hmm.
radio project. I
Yeah.
did a mother for her daughter, okay, very young daughter. And the mother had a terminal diagnosis. Okay, not everybody, I started out working with people who were terminal, but then
Hmm.
that didn't continue that way. And the majority of my clients now are healthy and vibrant people. But the mother, it was not really all about her own history and the things that she did, which she spoke 13 different languages. She's been to 13 different countries. So there was a small piece of that at the beginning. What it was all of her advice and her love
Yeah.
and her tips and her tools that she wanted her daughter to implement through the ages. So we talked about, or she talked about, because I don't do any of the
Mhm.
talking in this project, the different stages of her life and the different ages and what she'll need to know. And it was on a more intimate level, more intimate so that you're not going to get this from a book.
Right.
Her mother's talking directly to her and she can listen to her whenever she needs her most. So it can change the trajectory of somebody's life.
Of course.
Um, I recently did a project from a husband to his wife, and it was a pre-planning project, almost like life insurance, and getting all your important papers and your estate plan in order. And it was just in case. But he talked all about, he gave her guidance and support about how he wanted her to keep on living without him and the things that
Oh.
she needed to do and still have that glass of wine and go on
Yeah.
walks with your friends and do the, oh my gosh, for me, that was the tearjerker through the whole
Yeah.
thing because, and he's not even ill or sick,
Hmm.
but he's, planning and he's in his 70s and just in case. What about first responders? I think about this. My son's girlfriend lost her dad during the tragic event of 9/11. Okay, she's 26 now, but she told me she was 4 years old at the time. And after she learned about my project, she held it in her hand and she said, "My God, Susan, what I would give to
Yeah.
have this from my dad talking to me about how I when I was born and how much he loved me, and it could have changed the last 20 years of my life knowing that we were connected and that my dad really really loved me." I also work with a grandparent who is in their, mid 70s, but their granddaughter's under 5. Okay, they spend tremendous amount of time together. He takes her places, he's teaching her things in life. However, realizing the huge gap in
Hmm.
generations, okay, did this so that she will always remember his voice and she will always listen to grandpa and appreciate that special relationship that they do have now. So power of our voices is tremendous. And as you can see today, there's several modalities that you can do this in, right? In leaving your own legacy, because we're really, really leaving love and wisdom and connection. We're just doing it in many different ways.
A basic, like you said, talking to me, who would you direct this to? Like I could visualize having to make 6 different recordings. Can you do, can you do a more of a general, uh, try to cover your spouse and your kids and your grandchildren, uh, without doing 10 different recordings? Um,
Of course you can, Otto. Of course you can. Okay, we can do any type of a project. My my observations and my feelings behind putting this project together is for that intimacy.
Yeah.
It's for the intimacy, the one on one of having your loved one speak directly to you on your memories and history and why I love you so much and what my hopes and wishes for your future are. Can we do Can we talk to everybody? Sure. I do that in all my other projects. I do it in the book, I do it in the legacy letter. So, yes, you can, but I like the intimacy of the one on one.
Yeah. Well, after the break, we're going to continue talking with Susan Capurso, who is an end of life doula, a legacy creator, and author, all about how to preserve your legacy. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios podcasts, available on any podcast app. You know, those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-hosts, Otto Lewis and Paula Ewell. And we're jumping right back in with Susan Capurso, who is an end-of-life doula, a legacy creator, and author, all about how to preserve your legacy for your family, for your friends, and in all of your loved ones. So prior to the break, you were kind of telling us about all the different types of legacy things, and I know Otto really wanted to kind of walk through, is it because with these things, is it, beneficial to have a lot of prep beforehand? Give us a little walkthrough of the process.
Okay, so generally in the previous projects that I spoke about, there is not a lot of preparation. We do go back and forth in emails, and that's how I collect photos and some other facts, but it's generally one on one with you and I already have my 300 questions that we dive into. With the radio project, it's a little bit different. And I know you were interested in that, Otto, because of course, that's more personal and intimate, but the radio project is different for everybody. And it really depends on who you're directing this to and what's the reason and what's the relationship. So I spent a little time first getting to know you and the reasons why you want to put this together. And after we have that, it's a Zoom room like this, so I've worked globally with people in Ireland. I've done this. After we're finished with that consultation, I go to work in putting together uh, a list of questions that are personally designed for your situation and who you're giving this to. Once I have that in place, it gets emailed to you, and you will then do a little homework yourself, and you will come up with, maybe under each question that I ask in the paperwork, you will come up with 2 or 3 bullets of a memory that you want to speak about. Okay, so there is a little work on your part. I don't have your memory, so I can't do that part of it. It may not take you that long. You could do it in an hour in an afternoon. You may want to really spend a little more time being more thoughtful as to your memories. And believe it or not, there's not a lot of writing involved, because with these bullets, they're so short, but the memory's there. So once you see that bullet, like um, our honeymoon, when we sat at the bar. Okay, so that's a bullet. The memories are there. So you're going to start talking about that story. And even if you slip up, even if you laugh, even if you cry, it's a conversation that you're having for this person that they'll listen to. And they'll appreciate that even more because it's raw and it's coming from your heart, from your love. And then when we schedule our day to get together, the questions will be right in front of you in a PowerPoint, basically, right? And you'll go through each questions. I'll know when to switch the screen. So you'll have it in front of you. You'll know the 3 bullets you want to talk about, or 1 bullet, whatever. And we'll keep going. And that conversation turns into a personal love letter for this person that you love. And then I take it, I have it professionally edited for sound quality. Okay, not edited, taking things out and stops and starts like we do on radio shows, right? I want to keep everything that's there intact, but so that the sound quality is simply amazing and it sounds almost like a podcast. And I can't do that. I know where my expertise lies. So I have somebody that I use that does that. Then it comes back and it gets implemented into this radio for you. And I show you how to make copies and to do other things if you want to use that for different types of things.
When you get the sound, what like type technology is this sound in? Like one of the things I've gone through is converting 8 millimeter to this to that to getting away from uh, audio tapes and going through the whole process. What what is it the physically, I guess, or technically, how is the sound there? So
Okay.
it'll
Well, I
be
can't
there.
tell you all my secrets, Otto,
Yeah.
because then the world would take my
That's
wonderful
right.
project. However, we do know that we live in a digital world, right? So everything, even what you're hearing on the radio, like you'll have the capability to take other places, is what I'm
Yeah, well,
saying.
that's what's really nice is that you were saying you could share it, around, which is nice. Certainly.
That's right, if that's something you want to do.
Could I
Exactly.
ask you also a rough
Yeah.
idea of what something like that to, preserve the legacy with your voice? What's a rough number for cost?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, so with that, I don't want to give costs out
Well, a
over the
world
radio
like,
because I
range.
do, yeah, well, but I do like having personal conversations with people, and I need to feel them out to see which project is right for them. What's right for you, Otto, won't be right for your spouse or for somebody else, what they're looking for, that end, uh, their end project, should you call it. So I don't want to give out costs, but I do want to tell you that because of the time spent on this project. It's a lot less expensive than the memoir that I ghostwrite, or even the coffee table book,
Mhm.
because both of those take a lot of time. They take, the coffee table book, we get together once a week, but for 4 weeks in a row. And then it's all the time that it takes me to put that and create that book. This project is much different in that we're only spending up to 3 hours together, besides the prep and what I do afterwards. So it's my favorite project, and it's the best cost efficient, best price project
I get it.
for
In
my
other words, it's
clients.
Mhm.
like saying, well, you want, how much would it cost you to build a house? Well,
That's
do
right.
you want more than 2 rooms or 4 rooms or what? I get it. I understand. Uh,
That's right. That's right. And I've done this radio project exactly the same way, because this project itself just came to fruition last year. All right. So I haven't been doing this one for 7, 8 years. However, if somebody wanted to turn that into a much more lengthy, get together in a few sessions, or like you said, we could tweak it and you could do one for everybody in your family and talk about the whole family. So I haven't done any of those yet on the radio, but it's such a flexible type of project that it can meet everybody's needs.
Yeah, I think that's just, I mean, it's just so incredibly important. And was going through all of your notes, and you were saying there's so many misconceptions people have about leaving a legacy. And I'd like to kind of dive into what you meant by that or what you've experienced.
Well, yeah. So as far as misconceptions, okay, people, we need this connection, first of all, in our lives, right? People are leaving home. Younger generations are not realizing the impact that they come from something so much bigger in the world. It's just all
Yeah.
about them at that time, and and the disconnect is just it's prevalent really in so many households, right? So people have misconceptions that if they're leaving their legacy, that it's all about money. It's about material possessions. Oh, the jewelry I have in my jewelry box, or what's in dad's toolbox in the garage. But it's really so much more
Yeah.
than that. A true creative legacy is about leaving your values, your wisdom, your smarts, okay, your memories, your love for future generations. Okay. Another misconception is that people think, oh, my legacy, you know, that's for when you're really old, or that's for terminally ill people. But I have to tell you, it's absolutely not true. So it's never too early to start thinking about legacy. I've done legacy letters now for people who are implementing their estate plans and want to have that last missing piece of the puzzle in there. And they're 50,
Hmm.
except for some terminally ill people. Generally, they're about 50 and up that choose to do this because they have a well-rounded history that they can tap into. Uh, but the younger you are, it allows you to start early and to be more
Hmm.
creative and to leave that thoughtful legacy. And again, look at my own husband who died at 52. And if I had only been doing these projects when he was alive, but he is the biggest reason that I started my journey. If I had only done it, my young boys at the time would know their dad more. They'd hear him laugh and telling stories. And what I would give to have that today. And that's one of the reasons I did this. But it's just, there's so many misconceptions and none of them are true. So you can start this at any age, at any time, and get something in place. That's all I have to say.
I'm big on like a lot of I've done a lot of work, as they both know, on family trees, and
Yeah.
I have a thing called Hodgepodge, which is 50 pages, just what it says, hodgepodge. it's all kinds of stuff that I had in my brain about my childhood and different things,
Beautiful.
you know, but it's not organized in such a fashion like you would do. Uh, but my point being that a family tree, and it has a box and it says born 1943, died 1990. So, okay, that's an interesting piece of information, but you really don't know anything.
You don't.
Yeah,
You
it's
Yeah.
don't.
like a
And I want to
box with a,
bounce.
yeah, it's just like, okay. So
I
what?
want to bounce off of that, Otto. Okay. First, I want to tell you a little story about my 19-year-old niece who came here to dinner. Her name is Julia. My mother had passed away, and in a small box of her belongings was a 3-page letter from her aunt. So that would be my great aunt and Julia's great great aunt.
Mm.
And I said, Julia, you have to see what I found today. It's amazing. So Julia stood at the counter reading this letter. She had tears in her eyes. Now, remember, she's 19 years old. She said, Aunt Sue, do you have any more of these? And I said, no. Why? And in the letter, she had a farm, my Aunt Josie, and she pickled vegetables. She had a winery. She made wine. She had animals that she tended to every day. She was talking to my mother all about this. Meanwhile, they only lived about 50 miles apart, but back
Mm.
then, I mean, that was
Right.
forever, right? So I said, why do you seem upset? And she said, because Aunt Sue, this is my family. These are my ancestors right
Mhm.
here. Did I look like her? Do I sound like her? She wanted to know more. And that was another key to me starting this business with people because if a 19-year-old is looking, and to your point more, Otto, you know how many millions of members are on ancestry.com? They're
Mhm.
looking for that connection.
Yeah.
They're looking to know some of their roots and where they came from. They want to know more. But in your defense, Otto, that's exactly what they're getting. They're going to get a second or third cousin. They're going to get an aunt that they never knew they had. And in rare cases, find the parent that when they were given
Mhm.
up as a child, which I love that part of it. But
Mhm.
they're not finding the intimate piece of the puzzle that people just don't think about. So I also want to tell you just a few ways that your listeners today, I know you
Mhm.
have a lot of them, and how
Mhm.
they can get started on maybe some of their own projects, right? And there are so many things that you could do. The easiest one is to pick up a pretty journal or not. Amazon has them inexpensively. Get an old marble notebook that you have in the other room, right? Keep it on your living room table. You watch TV at night, you relax. Once a week, put a little paragraph in there. Talk about something to do with your life when you were young or even to your children or grandchildren today. Talk to them in it because I got to tell you, these are lessons that are learned, okay? And later on, even if you fill out 3 pages in the book, it's going to be more than your family ever had. So that's one thing that you can do that's very easy. Another one is to record your family history. Do some of the things I do. Talk to some of your older relatives, document their story. What I say is caregivers have a golden opportunity. Don't spend so much time watching TV. Keep that notebook. Record some of these stories. Ask a few questions about memories or when they were little. You wouldn't believe every single client I've ever had and asked, tell me about your bedroom when you were 5 years old. I don't care if you're 97 years old. You remember what your bedroom looked like when you were 5 years old. And that in itself turns into another memory and another story, talking about some of the things you did and the dolls you had on your shelf and your GI Joes, whatever. But it turns into another story. So caregivers have this opportunity to help the people that they're caring for as well. Um, you know, Another one is these legacy letters I do. Sometimes people can be a little apprehensive, like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, or I have nothing
Well,
to.
that's so funny you were saying that, because I was sitting here, Susan, thinking, I think a lot of times, I know my own self too, like, where do I even start? It's like you
Mhm.
almost need some kind of tool to like get you going, kind of thing.
That's right. That's right. And that's where my expertise comes in over the years, because I know how to get something out of you.
Right.
I know how to take you back to a moment in time. And I don't just ask you a question like, tell me about your room when you were 5. I go into conversation and I said, well, did you play with dolls? Right? Did you have GI Joes when you were little? Did you have friends on the block that you played with? Like, I pull the conversation out of you, and it ends up turning into this beautiful story. But in these letters, it's they're so important, and they could be as little as 1 or 3 pages that my niece read, or my legacy letters are actually 8 to 10 Word documents long. So it's a substantial amount of information that can be given now to your family or later on. But that's another way in the letter style. You can also, we know
I'm going to
about photo
pause that
albums.
because we're going
Yep.
to get more tips from Sue Capurso. We are taking
Okay,
a short break. We're talking with Susan Capurso, end of life doula, legacy creator, author, all about how to preserve your legacy. You're listening to
perfect.
Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-hosts, Otto and Paula Ewell. And we are speaking with Susan Capurso, who is an end-of-life doula, legacy creator, and author, all about how to preserve your legacy for your family and friends and your loved ones out there. So before the break, we were going over just some really good tips that you had to kind of how to get started in forming your own legacy. So I'd like to jump right back into that.
Fantastic. So another thought I have is the photo album, right? Or scrapbooks. And they're so easy to do. Problem with us old timers is we have 25 photo albums sitting in the closet, right? So you don't want that. You want to make something special, and you can turn this into a project with, even with your children, get some help or from a friend. And you're going to flip through those real quick, and you're going to pull out the most important ones. We all have pictures that just do it for us, right? And then you have that memory, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I love that picture." So you're going to pull these out. You're going to turn it into its own photo album, or better yet, a scrapbook. You can go to Michael's and get scrapbooks with all the little extra doodads. But the reason why I like the scrapbook is because next to the photos on each page, you can write about what that experience was. And my gosh, I have one here that I put together for my mom, and it's just beautiful. It's really a beautiful way to bring life full circle for you. Now, in today's digital world, there are many ways that you can work on this online.
Mhm.
And a lot of our photos are on phones. So you would save them all. So they're on your computer or a backup system, and you have them there at your fingertips to use. However, your favorite 2,000 photos that you have in your phone are not everybody's favorite photos.
Mhm.
So again, you want to choose the best of the best. There are um, there are family websites that you can actually find online and upload all your favorite photos to it. Let people talk about it. Let people tell their own stories about that particular occasion or milestone. Family preservation is important to everybody, but nobody knows how to get started, and nobody knows what to do. You can take any of these, do some research online. not only are there family portals, but there are places that you can create different things. A lot of people that I've done these legacy letters for always tell me, oh my gosh, the recipes that I have a box full of recipes from my mother. Do you know now there's digital recipe
Yeah.
books? All you need to do is type in your recipe and how to do it. You can write little comments next to it, why it was her favorite recipe, and at the very end, hit submit. They'll send you a hardcover recipe book, and you can buy as many as you want for all the family members to always
Yeah,
have.
no, it's so true. So, because I'm you're talking my language. I'm like the queen of a scrapbook. I love it. I've been doing it since I was a little girl with my grandparents, especially. So it's very
Nice.
near and dear to me. And, I'm so happy that I did that because, and I've talked about it a bazillion times on the show that my grandfather was a fashion photographer. So that was his identity. That was his world. If you talk to my
Yes.
grandpa, that's all he wanted to. And, towards there was a project that we worked on together. We took all of his slides, we went through, I mean, because there was a bazillion and then I made it into a book, so then he got to, have that and we did like a slide. And these were things that, obviously it could have been more elaborate and jazzy, but for him, he would sit there and I remember like, he would have the aides were over there and he'd, bless those aides hearts because, he'd make them watch it a bazillion times over and over again. Um, but it was such a moment. And to this day, I'm so thankful that, I put in that work because those are moments and treasures
Yes.
that, I'm able to now share with everyone. And it's really just so incredibly special. And with the recipe, I mean, I just did that for my mom also. And she wanted my grandma's actual handwriting because, my grandma wrote everything. So I just, copied them and put them in. I bought a book on Amazon for, very inexpensive and,
Yes.
organized it by, different holidays and, our Greek, like kind of traditional recipes. And it's something that she uses every holiday when she's cooking, and I was thinking I'm so glad that was like another project that I did, that really, and then that will
Yes.
get passed down to me. And it's just, I really encourage all of our listeners. These are things that, and as much as it's such a gift for your loved ones, it's such a gift for you, the creator of these things too.
You
It
said a lot.
absolutely
I'm
is.
sorry, Susan, but you said a lot of things that, ring bells up here. Uh, there's so many times you look back and you say, God, I wish I would have asked so
I
and
know.
so these
Right.
questions.
Yes.
And when I do this hodgepodge thing, I try to keep that in mind. People now may not care right now. The
That's right.
younger people are busy, they're working, they families to raise, and all of the above. Then they get to be a little older, like in my bracket, and all of a sudden you really want to know. And the thing that you pointed out, a couple of things really. Uh, the the photo business is unbelievably complicated, especially today because there's like 800,000 pictures you can go through to come out with what is the most important, which takes a lot of time. And
Sure.
I think what I'm hearing with you is really the focus. Like when you watch a show like Finding Your Roots, they cover the whole thing in like a book in theory, all right? But they have a lot of uh, investigative power that we don't have. But
That's
they were
right.
able to condense this into what is really key. And, I think that's what people need help with because we all tend
Yeah.
to go off the track and
Sure.
not focus, and you wind up with 400 different things.
Yeah.
That's right. And
And
start things and don't finish them.
exactly.
And and there's fear involved too,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not at the end of my life. Why would I do this now? And to your point, Christina, I have many people that I meet in my journeys that say to me, "Oh my gosh, I wish I knew that you did this last year
Yeah.
before my mother passed."
Yeah.
And the time to think about it is right now. Do not wait for a rainy day. The rainy day, once it comes, it's gone, and you won't have the opportunity to do that. But like you said too, Christina, that leaving a legacy of this type, it is rewarding. No matter what, I'm telling you, when I work with people at the beginning of the project, they're fear of the unknown. They don't know how it's going to go. They think they're not going to have the memories. Oh yeah, we can make a book, but it'll be 3 pages. They don't know, but they don't understand either that it's an opportunity for them to do their own life review, to reflect on their own experiences. And it's just amazing at how a person can come full circle and realize their own lessons that they've learned in life. It's it's cathartic to share these experiences
Yeah,
and
and
then
I
to
think
have
people
them.
just are so unaware too, and because just you triggered so much in my head, and especially working with seniors here, and as I had mentioned, we do a lot of these kind of programs in more recent times because we were really seeing the need, to kind of do this, and you hear so often from people like, oh, like I'm not that exciting, like I don't, and they kind of downplay their life that it wasn't this, big
That's
showy
right.
thing. But it's like then you get going, and then you find out so much. And those are my favorite kind of stories here. And that's what I love doing about this show. We've had the privilege of being able to interview. We did a lot of veterans, World War II veterans when we first started. And, I remember sitting there and the family members would be like, oh my God, my dad never told me this story. And it was just, to what you're saying, it's like once they get talking, about these things, there's so much that, they probably didn't even realize. And that's what I encourage everyone to who's listening to do, because I think it's easy to kind of throw in the towel and say, oh, this is too hard, I don't know what to do, but I think it's once you get into the groove. I mean, we've all have such interesting stories to tell, certainly.
It's funny when I do, especially the legacy letters, I have a lot of couples, who want husbands and wives that want to do it together. And I always insist, I probably the first 2 or 3 I did were with the couple. But then what I found was the husband or vice versa would say after the other spouse said something, they'd be like, oh yeah, ditto.
Yeah.
I feel the same
Yeah.
way. So I stopped doing that right away. And I have one come into the Zoom room and then she can go find him later on. And then he comes in and
Yeah.
we go through the whole gamut again. Okay. And the stories are completely different, even from your honeymoon. They're different. And you've talked
I
about
love
them over
that.
the years, but they're different. But my favorite part of all these projects is I can have the coldest, stern person answering the questions, getting the job done. But then the minute we start talking about your wishes and your hopes for each individual family member. So I go through each child separately. I go through your grandchildren. And once we get to that real emotional part, I would say 95% of my people break down and have to grab a tissue
So
because
beautiful.
it really is sensitive and it's so loving. And I even get choked up, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
It's
bless your heart, because I would be a mess all the time. I don't even know. It's just I think what you're doing, it's a true angel, and it's the work and the skills, especially, when people are, maybe their health is declining or whatnot, and you can really feel that, sense of urgency to get this out is just Susan, what was your career before you dove into this?
no one ever asked me that. It's so funny. So I needed a job when I was 16, and my mother said, you just got your license this week. There's a sign in the florist window. They needed a driver. I said,
Ah,
okay, I could do this. So I walked in. I drove for the man for 2 days, and he says, oh no, we'll find another driver. You're in here with me. I'm going to teach you everything I know. I worked for him for about 18 years.
wow.
I bought my own flower shop. I had that for about 5 years, but the economy, I was in an industrial area and it didn't last.
Mhm.
Okay. And after that, I went to work for 1-800-Flowers.com, the corporate office, and I managed franchises all over the United States.
Oh, wow.
So I did have the full circle in the flower business, but that was
Mhm.
my entire life was in the flower
Yeah.
field.
Oh, that's so interesting. Because he's just talking to you. It's like clearly you're meant to do what you're doing.
Oh
And we
my
always say that
gosh,
on
more
this
than
show. It's
anything.
just, yeah, because you could feel, the what I love about interviewing people is you could especially when they're so invested in what they're doing and they really care, and that makes it, just so special for anyone involved. And I mean, I could like listen to your stories forever, and I think you're really giving true gifts to people out there, and it's so incredibly special. And even just your knowledge of kind of how to get started doing this alone. I always think it's so great to be able to, start this young. That's always kind of the message we're starting on, we're preaching on this show, Otto and I always say. But unfortunately, as Otto mentioned, people are busy. They're running around, they're taking care of kids, they don't really have time to sit down and do this. But I think too, what's nice about, when you are retired, now you have these things. And I always encourage people to start some kind of a project, and to really get to thinking. And I'm sure there are, so many different free tools that you can kind of get it going. And then if you want to take it a step further, certainly, contacting you, Susan, because I mean, it's something that I definitely, a note to myself would absolutely like love to do. And it's just, I just
Don't
think
wait
it's
for the
so
rainy
incredible.
day, though. Don't wait for the rainy
Yeah,
day.
no, you're right though. No, you really are right. And because I'm
But I
also a
have to
firm
tell you,
believer.
out of the 6 projects, there are a couple of them that I encourage people to use as a foundation and come
Hmm.
back to it 5 or 10 years from now and continue on with it,
Yeah.
especially if you're at a younger age, right?
Hmm.
So, they're just so important. I completely lost my train of thought. I know what I was going to tell you. Okay, so be careful when you're looking for somebody to help you with these
Hmm.
or to guide you, because I've done research and some of the projects are very straightforward. Like there are ones that will send you a question a week or a
Hmm.
question a day. They are wonderful. So don't get me wrong. It's better than having nothing at all. Okay, but you can't offer that type of project as much as you can doing something on a personal level, either by yourself or
Hmm.
with somebody who does the different types of things that I do. You want to find somebody like that, because you're going to get the most wonderful treasure out of that gift than you will from some of these, just answer the few questions type of thing.
All the people who are listening to this show, and I can speak for myself, my mother left a lot of things, and she came from Germany in 1928. She actually left an album that was taken on the boat when she came from Germany. And I've obviously there's nobody I could talk to about who
Yeah.
were in the album, but I made
Yeah,
a point of keeping the album, and it has on the outside Hamburg, and it's the original album that,
yeah.
and I actually wrote a bit of a story about the album inside of the album, showing
Oh.
which people were my mother. And,
Hmm.
it's hard for them to understand, but my mother was a pretty stylish lady back in 1928 on this
Yeah.
tugboat, basically. She wasn't in first class, but she left a tremendous amount of paperwork, what they had to go through to get out of Germany, all the documents. And I was very fortunate. I was also fortunate that I kept it and that I was
Yeah.
able to be alive to do something with that because future generations are not going to have any idea or would have no idea, and they would end
Right.
up throwing it out. And
Yeah.
this I felt that it was really a very big piece of
Hmm.
one part of the family legacy, if you will. Uh, Anyhow, point being, older people should really look around and see what's there. Old
Yep.
pictures,
Yeah.
old documents, letters from your aunt, 3 pages, whatever. Um, don't I have letters that were written during World War II. My family was all here. My father was from Germany, but he was here and he was a citizen. So it was very complex, letters between Germany and the United States during World War
Yeah.
II. Um, Yeah.
So probably you can make your own little time capsule, really is what I think. Just encourage people, all of our listeners, to think, start the conversation. And I like what you said, Susan. It's not something that needs to be done like, in a set, so you can start figuring it out a little here, and even if, anything is really just special to kind of preserve your legacy. But
how would
unfortunately, we are
how
at
would
the end of the
Susan be
show.
contacted?
Yeah, Susan, what is your contact number?
My website is susancapurso.com. That's easy. My phone number is 631-946-8100.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you again, always, Susan, for joining us and just really just giving us all the warm and fuzzies every time you're on, I have to say. I'd also like to thank everyone who today who has listened to us. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.